Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today, we're going to be talking about the sophomore album from Logic, titled The Incredible True Story. So here's a quandary. You're an up-and-coming rapper who's riding off a ton of buzz and you've just dropped your debut. And while you're getting some critical acclaim from some outlets, there are some critics who have come down pretty hard on you about your flow's resemblance to another, more critically acclaimed MC. And even despite the fact that your production's very accessible, even mainstream friendly, and your album is selling quite well, you're not getting any radio with any recognizable hits. So okay, what do you do next? Well, there's no easy answer to that question. For as much as I really liked Under Pressure by Logic when I reviewed it last year, I was definitely worried about this. I still think the album really holds up, even despite the easy Kendrick Lamar comparison in its flow, mostly because Logic's brand of smoothness and internally focused introspection does lead to a distinctive personality that I'll admit I find appealing. But outside of a few songs like Nicki and the criminally underrated Metropolis, it's not an album that I found myself a lot of time to revisit. I found myself concerned that the style over substance criticisms that had been leveled at Logic might have a little bit of validity if it wasn't gripping me more in the long term, why I wasn't going back to it. So when it came down to a sophomore album, and I started hearing the buzz that it would be a sci-fi narrative-driven concept album, okay, if he's looking for a way to stand out and away from Kendrick, that'd be the way to do it. Hell, this could be new territory for hip-hop as a genre. I did a little bit of research here, and the closest we've gotten is Deltron 3030, and even with that, it hit deeply diminishing returns to the long-awaited sequel Event 2 in 2013. Sure, Big Crit took stabs at it with Cadillactica, but not to this narrative level. But at the same time, considering that Logic was going to be handling most of the production himself, not no ID behind the boards, this had the feel of an overreach, the sort of ambitious project that could be make or break for a guy like Logic. But hey, I'm a massive sci-fi nerd and I'm a fan of the guy, so I prayed for the best. Did The Incredible True Story manage to deliver? Well, here's the thing. I'm convinced this is the album that Logic, he had to make this at some point to try and define his own lane. And yet, the more I listen through The Incredible True Story, I'm not convinced he pulled this off. I'm not gonna call it a sophomore slump, because this is far from a bad album, but it's not as good as Under Pressure, and in a year of great hip-hop albums and some really high expectations from me, I'm not sure The Incredible True Story really lives up to it. It's a good album, a really good album, but not quite a great one. So let's start with that conceptual framework of this record. It's a while in the future, humanity's all living on a space station called Babel after we destroyed Earth, as you do, and our intrepid explorers played by Steve Blum and Kevin Randolph are venturing out on a spaceship to find the planet called Paradise. Yeah, it's all kind of on the nose, but okay, I'll roll with the symbolism. And this is one of those stories where the journey is not the story. It's about finding that destination, that paradise, a quest that has consumed the remainder of humanity, and a quest that they both question, whether humanity will just ruin the planet all over again, or whether or not it's even what they truly want. What I found interesting is the assertion that no other art had been created since humanity left Earth, and that by finding paradise, it'll give them the freedom to create again. So okay, just like Under Pressure, Logic's primary muse is focused on the creative process itself. The problem is that paradise as a metaphor feels really confused, not helped by the final track where they actually land on paradise and experience life for the first time. The closest interpretation is that paradise means different things to different people. Wherever the people of Babel, it's an obsessive search for more resources to consume and spend. For Steve's character, it's a chance to create something authentic and new and organic. But this drives the assertion that paradise is finite as a whole for everyone. There's a limited amount of it. And while it might be true for the resources of a planet, it's kind of different when it comes to creativity and pursuing one's passions, because the ending sample in the title track, it rejects that scarcity. And it's very telling that given infinite possibilities to render any famous human as a simulation earlier on this record, Kevin Randolph's character chooses Big Sean. I mean, I get the joke, but you can't get better than that? I mean, sure, when given infinite possibilities, we can all be stumped. Too much knowledge never makes for easy decisions, and we default to familiarity. But what then does paradise really represent for these characters? Is that what you're saying about infinite possibilities? Authentic life and potential that we as humanity can simply consume anew? Doesn't that undercut your entire dramatic reveal of infinite new possibilities? Okay, now if all that sounded rambling and confused and kind of pretentious, that's mostly because the tone and arc and themes of this record are all over the place. Logic's playing things very seriously in his bars, but the dialogue in the first half of this album is very self-referential and jokey. Say nothing of the self-aggrandizing parts of it, saying this record is the one that changed everything. I mean, I can appreciate healthy ego, but that seemed to be artificially trying to prop up the album's own legacy, especially considering that the dramatic arc seems pretty thin with very little real conflict. Hell, instead of trying to check out the abandoned ship they encountered that previously went looking for paradise, they fly right past past it. And that's before we get Logic's actual bars, which for the most part don't even refer to the story he's telling, or much of a story at all. It really does undercut the narrative of how little the actual rapping fits into the story of the album, which sure might make sense as something that the characters are revisiting years later, until you realize that there isn't that much revolutionary content that we haven't seen before from Logic. And it's less personal too. Logic did an impressive job laying out the complicated issues of the family and his addiction to nicotine and his own life on Under Pressure, and he seems to be struggling to go deeper with fresh ideas and wordplay. You'd think he'd add more to the sci-fi story he constructed, add more imaginative wordplay here, but most of the songs fall into either typical bragging or vague reminiscence about his past. Most of the topics that tie in is now that he's gotten to that point of transcendence, he wants us all to get there too by focusing on what we truly want instead of just doing it for the money, because then we'll never be happy. And while I really do love the idealism that fits with the sci-fi themes, it feels a little bit, well, divorced from reality. As much as I'd love to write and work on YouTube full-time, I still need to pay rent. I still need to eat. And while I get the egalitarianism of it all, it can strike me as a little bit naive at points, especially when Logic tries to defend Drake's brag rap by saying, well, Tupac did it too. I don't think anyone would deny that, but Tupac also had social commentary, was much more interesting and detailed and more intelligent and powerful MC. Not a hill I'd go out defending there, Logic. And you know, maybe it wasn't the best idea to name check an artist whom you trace so many of your flows. Yeah, I might as well get this out of the way and give Logic credit for, on a technical level, he's a strong MC. His bars connect really well, he's got great cadence, his rhymes almost all line up, and even his singing's gotten a lot better. But it's hard to ignore that I can hear Logic and then I can point directly to the flows from Kanye, Drake, and especially Kendrick. And hell, for the most part, I don't even mind when he pulls from Drake, considering Logic is nowhere near as obnoxious as Drake is. But it ties into an odd problem I noticed with Logic's bars: the detail. You'd think that on an album blending in sci-fi and anime influences, there'd be more references to distinctive sci-fi with lyrical flavor or hard-hitting punchlines, but they don't really materialize that well either. There are punchlines and they are good, but nothing that blew me out of the water. Hell, if you took out all these skits, this would fall into the line as a pretty solid and spacey inspirational hip-hop album, no matter how much Logic would like you to divorce him from direct genre comparisons, because I'm sorry dude, you are a hip-hop artist. Because there is one element that I genuinely love about this album, and it definitely saves it from being anything close to bad: the production and the instrumentation. Fragmented symphonic vocals against liquid guitars, swells of strings, spacey synthesizers and flutes, and those horns calling back to smooth jazz. The vibes in this album that it creates are damn near fantastic. The points where the actual words can just wash by me. This album brings some great melodic grooves too, like that bass line on Paradise, or the eerie brittle fuzz on Young Jesus that kicks it into some great momentum, for the smooth burbling rollick of Intermission. Hell, even moments like the staccato synth against the sparse guitar and great melodic interplay of Lord Willin really do work, but the elements that feel strikingly reminiscent of Kanye's production, like the percussion that opens up Contact, that I could swear reminds me of Amazing from 808s and Heartbreak, or that rougher symphonic touch, the choppy samples, the bleak keys and strings, and the vaguely synthetic vocal layering on City of Stars. The only two instrumentals I didn't really care for were the Grizzly Bear sample blended with the Muhammad Ali roars on I Am the Greatest. Really didn't fit in well with the rest of the album, and the content didn't help matters, or the Chipmunk backing vocals on Never Been that made up the melody. And yet, even with that, the production has some great smooth texture, some solid beats, and they really do capture that futuristic space sound stunningly well. I can really get a lot of great vibes from this record. And that's the frustrating thing about The Incredible True Story by Logic, because it's far from a bad album. Hell, on a sonic level, it's a great fusion of the old school smoothness that Logic loves from Frank Sinatra's era with an optimistic futurism that's right up my alley. And considering how good the flows are against this production, this is an album I really wanted to love, but I can't help feel that in terms of lyrical detail, thematic execution, the tone, and Logic not quite breaking away from his influence as much as he'd want to, this record didn't hit me as hard as I really should have. I still like it, I will recommend it for the originality and technique. There really isn't that many rappers telling this sort of sci-fi storytelling, which means it's getting a strong 7 out of 10 from me, but you know what? Check out Under Pressure first. And while I like to say that Logic's sketching his own lane, he's got a ways to go, but even still, it is a good album. Check it out. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, or any other albums coming out that you want me to take a look at, I'd be more than happy to give them a listen. Till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.